The morning air was cold enough to sting the cheeks, but Tamika Brooks did not flinch. She stood at the back of a line of 43 men, every single one of them taller, broader, and louder than she was. Her green jacket was the only spot of color in a sea of black tactical gear. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun. In her hand, she held a folded piece of paper that had taken her 3 weeks to earn. A hearing notice. One open slot. Personal security detail for the CEO of Whitfield Technologies. The pay was triple what she was making at the warehouse. Triple. Enough to move Imani out of that cramped apartment. Enough to stop skipping meals so her daughter could eat. Enough to breathe. The men in front of her were laughing at her. "Lady, the bake sale is across the street," one of them said. He was 6'4", arms like tree trunks, a shaved head and a neck tattoo of a snake. "Maybe she's lost," another one chuckled, "probably looking for her husband." Tamika kept her face still. She had heard worse in basic training. She had heard worse in Kandahar. She had heard worse the day the officers came to her door with the folded flag. But then the lead trainer, a stocky white man in his 50s with a clipboard and a whistle, walked down the line. He stopped when he saw her. He looked her up and down, then he laughed, out loud in front of everyone. "You're joking, right?" he said. "This is a bodyguard tryout, ma'am, not a yoga class." The laughter spread. The men behind her hooted. One of them clapped slowly. Tamika's hand tightened around the hearing notice. Her jaw set. She had not come this far to be sent away. "I'd like a chance to try, sir," she said quietly. The trainer shook his head. "You'd get hurt, go home." And that was when the door on the second-floor balcony opened. A tall man in a charcoal gray suit stepped out, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. His dark blonde hair was combed back. His eyes were a cold, pale blue. Jonathan Whitfield, age 38, worth $4.2 billion, watched the scene below with the quiet focus of a man who missed nothing. He did not say a word, he just watched. The trainer saw him, cleared his throat, then turned back to Tamika with a smirk. "All right, ma'am, you want a chance, step up. Right now, Marcus, get over here." The giant with the snake tattoo stepped forward. He was grinning. "Take it easy on her, big guy," someone called out. Tamika set the hearing notice down on the concrete. She rolled her shoulders once. She stepped into the open space. And before anyone could finish laughing, the strongest man in the room was flat on his back, staring at the sky, wondering how he got there. "Before we continue, I have to ask you something honest. If you have ever been underestimated, laughed at, or pushed to the back of the line just because of how you look, drop the word believe in the comments and hit that subscribe button right now. This story is for every single person who has been told they are not enough. You are the reason I keep telling these stories. Don't leave yet. The best is still coming." The silence that fell over the courtyard was the kind of silence that lives in your bones. 42 grown men stood frozen. Marcus, the giant, was blinking up at the gray Chicago sky. His snake tattoo rose and fell with his heavy breathing. Tamika stood over him calmly. She had not even broken a sweat. Her green jacket had not moved. Her bun was still tight. The trainer, whose name was Harold Keene, dropped his clipboard. It hit the concrete with a clack. "What," he said slowly, "was that?" "A hip toss, sir," Tamika answered. Her voice was steady. "Standard Army combatives, level 3. He led with his shoulders. I redirected his weight." Marcus groaned and rolled onto his side. Another man rushed forward to help him up. He shook the man off, embarrassed. Harold stared at Tamika, then he looked up at the balcony. Jonathan Whitfield was still standing there. He lifted his coffee cup once, a small gesture, and nodded at Harold. Then he turned and walked back inside. Harold cleared his throat. "Line up, everyone," he said. His voice had lost all of its earlier confidence. "Obstacle course, timed run, move." The men moved. Some of them now glanced back at Tamika with something close to respect. Most of them still looked angry. Marcus did not look at her at all. Tamika picked up her hearing notice, folded it, and put it back in her pocket. She ran the obstacle course in 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The next best time was 4 minutes and 40 seconds. She shot paper targets at a range and hit every single one-center mass. She passed the written test on security protocols with a perfect score. By the end of the day, Harold Keene handed her a folder. 2-week probation, he said. He would not meet her eyes. Report Monday, 6 a.m. sharp. Tamika took the folder. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me, Harold muttered. Thank whoever's watching from upstairs. She walked to the bus stop as the sun set over Lake Michigan. She pulled out her phone and called the only number that mattered. A small voice answered, Mama. Hi, baby. Did you get it? Tamika closed her eyes. I got it, Imani. The 7-year-old on the other end of the line screamed with joy. Tamika laughed, tears rolling down her cheeks for the first time in months. Grandma says we can have pizza tonight to celebrate, Imani said, with extra cheese. Tell Grandma pizza sounds perfect. She hung up and stood at the bus stop, looking at the city lights. For the first time since the funeral, she felt like she could breathe. She did not know the man in the charcoal suit was watching her from the office window. She did not know he had already pulled her file. She did not know he had already seen the words Sergeant First Class, 75th Ranger Regiment, Silver Star recipient, widowed. She did not know that everything was about to change. Monday morning came with a light blue sky and a sharp wind off the lake. Tamika arrived at the Whitfield Technologies building at 5:45. She wore a maroon blazer over a white shirt and dark slacks. Her badge hung from a green lanyard around her neck. The lobby was enormous. Marble floors, tall windows, a sculpture of a steel tree in the center that cost more than her car. Harold met her at the front desk. He looked less hostile this morning, maybe just tired. Morning, Brooks, he said. Come with me. He led her through a set of glass doors into a training wing she had not seen during the tryouts. A full gym, a shooting range, a tactical course with a built-in scoring system. 4 other security officers were already working out. Your duty roster, Harold said, handing her a tablet. You'll rotate through the building posts for the first week, then we'll move you up. Tamika looked at the schedule. Her eyes stopped on one name. Mr. Whitfield's detail is listed here. Yeah, well, Harold rubbed the back of his neck. Orders from upstairs. He wants you in the rotation by week 2. Says he saw something Friday. I see. Don't let it go to your head, Brooks. You still have to earn your spot with the rest of the team. Understood, sir. She trained hard that first week. She ran the course every morning before shift. She studied the building blueprints until she could walk any hallway with her eyes closed. She memorized every face on the executive floor. She ate her lunch alone in the corner of the break room because the other officers still did not know what to make of her. On Wednesday evening, she was cleaning her locker when she heard a voice behind her. Sergeant Brooks. She turned. Jonathan Whitfield stood in the doorway of the locker room, hands in his pockets. He was taller than he had looked from the balcony. His pale blue eyes studied her without judgment. Mr. Whitfield, she stood up straight. I read your file, he said. Sir. Silver Star for pulling 3 soldiers out of a burning vehicle in Helmand Province. Yes, sir. Your husband. Tamika's jaw tightened just slightly. Sergeant First Class Terrence Brooks, KIA 2 years ago, same unit, different deployment. Jonathan was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you, sir. He nodded once. I wanted to introduce myself properly. You're an asset to this team, Sergeant Brooks. Welcome aboard. He turned to leave, then paused. My mother always said character shows when no one is looking. You kept your composure Friday when you had every right to lose it. That matters to me. He walked out. Tamika stood in the empty locker room for a long moment. She closed her locker quietly. Then she smiled just a little. That night she sat on the edge of Imani's bed and read her a story about a brave princess who could lift mountains. Imani fell asleep halfway through, her small brown hand wrapped around Tamika's finger. Tamika's mother, Deborah Brooks, stood in the doorway watching. "You look different." "Baby," Deborah said softly. "Different how?" "Lighter." Tamika looked down at her sleeping daughter. "Maybe things are finally turning around, Mama." Deborah nodded. "About time, sugar, about time." 2 weeks later, Tamika was assigned to Jonathan's personal detail for the annual Whitfield Charity Gala. It was being held at the Palmer House Hilton. 500 guests, $10 million in pledged donations. Every major tech executive in the Midwest would be there. The other 4 officers on the detail were not happy about it. "She's on the main floor," one of them muttered. His name was Bradley Kovac, and he had been with the company for 11 years. "She should be watching coat check." Harold ignored him. "Brooks, you're on Mr. Whitfield 6, Kovac perimeter, Ortiz and Miller exits, Thompson parking garage." "Copy that, sir," Tamika said. They deployed at 6. The gala started at 7. Jonathan arrived in a navy suit with a dark blue tie. He moved through the ballroom the way a good leader moves, smooth, warm with the people who mattered to him, polite with everyone else. Tamika stayed 2 steps behind him and to his left. She scanned every face. She noted every exit. She watched every hand. At 8:47, Thompson radioed in from the parking garage. "I've got movement on level 2, 2 men, no badges, they just came up the ramp on foot." "Hold position," Tamika said into her earpiece. "I'm coming down." "Brooks, Kovac is closer," Harold said over the channel. "Kovac is on perimeter, I'm on Mr. Whitfield. They're heading toward the elevator bank. I'll intercept at the stairwell." She leaned in to Jonathan. "Sir, I need to step away for 90 seconds. Stay with Mr. Kovac, keep to the main hall." Jonathan looked at her. "Go." She moved. She took the service stairwell 2 steps at a time. She reached level 2 of the garage in under 40 seconds. Thompson was crouched behind a concrete pillar. He pointed silently toward the elevator. 2 men in black jackets stood by the elevator doors. One of them was punching numbers into a phone. The other one had his hand inside his jacket, resting on something. Tamika stepped out from the shadow of a parked SUV. "Gentlemen, can I help you find something?" Both men turned. The one on the phone cursed and started backing up. The one with his hand inside his jacket pulled it out with something black. Tamika moved before he could raise it. She closed the distance in 3 steps, swept his arm wide, drove her elbow into his ribs, and brought him down face first onto the concrete. The black object clattered away. It was not a weapon. It was a camera. A hidden long-lens camera. The second man turned to run. Tamika caught him by the collar and put him against the wall. "Who sent you?" The man was gasping. "Please, please, we're just freelance. A man paid us 10 grand to get photos of Whitfield with the mayor's wife. It's a set-up story, that's all. Please don't hurt us." Tamika held him there. "Who paid you?" "I don't know his name. It was wire transfer through a shell company, I swear." Thompson had already cuffed the first one. The Chicago police arrived 4 minutes later. The 2 photographers were taken in. Tamika gave her statement. Harold met her at the stairwell on the way back up. "You took down 2 intruders without a single round fired, and nobody in the ballroom even noticed," Harold said. "That was the goal, sir." Harold was quiet, then he held out his hand. "I was wrong about you, Brooks, I'm sorry." She shook his hand. "Appreciated, sir." Back in the ballroom, Jonathan was speaking with the mayor. He looked up as Tamika returned to her post. His eyes asked a question. She gave a small nod. "Handled." He nodded back. Then he went on with his conversation like nothing had happened. But later that night, As the gala wound down and the guests drifted out to their cars, Jonathan turned to her at the coat check. "Sergeant Brooks, thank you." "Just doing my job, sir." "No," he said quietly, "you were doing more than that." He looked at her for a long moment. Something in his pale blue eyes softened in a way she had never seen in a man who ran billion-dollar companies. Then he walked out to his car, and she stood watching him go, and her heart was beating just a little faster than it should have been. On a Tuesday morning 3 weeks later, Tamika's mother called her in tears. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I fell getting out of the bath. I think I sprained my ankle. Mrs. Patterson is taking me to the clinic." "Mama, are you okay? Where is Imani?" "She's here, sugar, she's fine. But I can't watch her today and school is already out for teacher planning." Tamika closed her eyes. She was already in the car, 10 minutes from the office. She had a morning briefing at 8. Harold would understand, but she could not afford to miss meetings this early into the job. "Mama, I'll figure it out. Stay off that ankle. I'll come by tonight." She made a call to Harold. "Bring her in, Brooks," Harold said. "We have a family room on floor 12. She can stay there until you finish your shift." Tamika almost cried, "Thank you, sir." She picked up Imani. The 7-year-old was wearing a red sweater, yellow sneakers, and carrying a backpack full of engineering books. Her hair was in 2 small puffs with blue hairbands. "Mama, am I in trouble?" "No, baby. You're coming to work with me today. There's a special room for kids." "Will there be computers?" "I think so." "Okay." Imani held her hand all the way up the elevator. The family room was a cheerful space with beanbags, books, and 3 iPads loaded with educational apps. A staff attendant named Mrs. Colby greeted them warmly. Imani took off her backpack, pulled out a book titled How Bridges Stand Up, and settled onto a beanbag without a word. "She's a reader," Mrs. Colby said with a smile. "She's a lot of things," Tamika said. She kissed Imani on the forehead and headed to her post. At 11 o'clock, Tamika was stationed outside the 12th floor conference room. The door opened and Jonathan stepped out, followed by 3 senior staff. He was mid-conversation when a small voice interrupted from down the hallway. "Excuse me, sir, are you the boss of this building?" Jonathan stopped. He turned. Imani was standing there with her book in her arms, looking up at him seriously. Mrs. Colby was jogging up behind her, apologizing. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitfield. She wanted to use the restroom on this floor, and I turned my back for a moment." Jonathan held up a hand gently. "It's quite all right." He crouched down so he was eye level with Imani. "I am the boss of this building. My name is Jonathan. What's yours?" "Imani Brooks. I'm 7. My mama works here. She's a bodyguard. She's the best one." Jonathan smiled. "I happen to agree with you. Can I ask you a question?" "You may." Imani opened her book and pointed at a diagram of a suspension bridge. "The book says the cables hold the bridge up by pulling, but if they're pulling, shouldn't the bridge fall? I don't understand." Tamika stepped forward, embarrassed. "Imani, sweetheart, Mr. Whitfield is very busy." Jonathan held up his hand again. "Sergeant Brooks, give me 5 minutes." He sat right down on the hallway carpet. He took the book. He explained tension and compression using his tie, a pencil, and a paperclip. Imani listened with the focus of a scientist. She asked 3 more questions. Jonathan answered every one. His senior staff waited patiently in the hall, smiling to themselves. When he finally stood up, Imani said, "You're a good teacher, Mr. Jonathan. And you're a good student, Miss Imani." He turned to Tamika. His eyes were warm in a way she had not seen before. "She's remarkable, Sergeant." "Thank you, sir." That evening, after Tamika picked up Imani and drove home, she found an email waiting on her personal phone. It was from the Whitfield Foundation. Her daughter had been nominated for a full STEM enrichment scholarship. Summer programs, weekend workshops, a dedicated mentor. Tamika read the email 3 times. Then she sat at her kitchen table and covered her face with her hands. She accepted the scholarship the next morning with a simple email. "Thank you. We accept with gratitude." Jonathan saw the reply come in and smiled at his desk. He had lost his own little sister 20 years ago to a long illness. He had not felt this good about helping a child since. "I need to pause right here and ask you something. If a CEO who has every reason to look down on people treated a little girl like she mattered, don't you think that kind of kindness deserves to be seen? Please, hit subscribe right now. Share this story with someone who needs to believe that good men still exist. Drop a heart in the comments if you're still with me. We have so much more to go." Gregory Hensley was 61 years old and had spent the last 11 years trying to buy Whitfield Technologies. He was the CEO of Hensley Dynamics, a larger but slower rival based in Boston. He had offered Jonathan a buyout 3 times. Jonathan had refused 3 times. Hensley was not a man who took no for an answer. Tamika first heard his name in the elevator. She was riding up to the 32nd floor on a Thursday afternoon when 2 men in suits stepped on at the 21st floor. They did not see her in the back corner. They were mid-conversation. "Hensley is pushing the timeline," the first man said quietly. "He wants the numbers by Friday." "We can't move that fast. The internal audit is still going." "Then make it go faster. He's paying us well and I'm not about to disappoint him." "You really think this is going to work? Whitfield isn't stupid." "Whitfield is distracted. You've seen how he's been lately. Ever since that new bodyguard showed up, he's off his game. This is the window." The elevator dinged at the 30th floor. Both men got off without looking back. Tamika stayed still. Her heart was pounding. She got off at 32 and went straight to Harold's office. She closed the door. "Sir, I need to report something I overheard." She told him everything. Harold listened without interrupting. When she was done, he picked up his phone. "Get Mr. Whitfield. Tell him we need him in the secure conference room in 10 minutes. No assistants, no phones." Jonathan arrived 8 minutes later. His expression did not change as Tamika repeated what she had heard. He asked her to describe the 2 men. She did. She could pick them out of a crowd of 1,000. "Internal audit team," Jonathan said quietly to Harold. "I know who they are, and I know who they answer to." "Who, sir?" Harold asked. Jonathan's pale blue eyes were colder than Tamika had ever seen them. "Brett Calloway, my head of operations. The man I trusted with the keys to this company for the last 7 years." There was a long silence. "Sergeant Brooks," Jonathan said. "Sir?" "I'd like you to work with Harold on a quiet internal investigation. No one else knows. I need everything documented. Financial records, communication logs, meeting transcripts. If Brett is selling us out to Hensley, I want proof that holds up in federal court." "Yes, sir." "And Sergeant," his voice softened just slightly, "be careful. If they know we know, this could get ugly." Tamika nodded. Over the next 10 days, she and Harold built a file. Tamika reviewed badge access logs and cross-referenced them with meeting schedules. She pulled parking garage footage. She traced email metadata. She worked late nights in the secure office on the 42nd floor. Jonathan brought her coffee twice. Once he stayed and talked with her for an hour about nothing in particular, just her daughter, her mother, the neighborhood she grew up in outside Atlanta. She told him her father had been a pastor. Her husband had been her high school sweetheart. Her mother had raised 5 children on a teacher's salary and still had more love in her than anyone Tamika had ever met. Jonathan told her his father had been cold and demanding. His mother had been kind but distant. His younger sister Rebecca had died when she was 9 and he had been 14. He had built Whitfield Technologies to honor her memory because she had loved machines and wanted to be an inventor. "She would have liked Imani," he said quietly. "Imani would have liked her too," Tamika said. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Jonathan stood up. Get some rest, Sergeant. We have a long road ahead. He walked to the door. He paused. Tamika. It was the first time he had used her first name. Yes, sir. Thank you for all of it. He left. She sat at the desk for a long time after he was gone. By the end of the second week, Tamika and Harold had a file 200 pages thick. Brett Calloway, head of operations for Whitfield Technologies, had been feeding internal financial data to Gregory Hensley for 18 months. He had been paid $6.4 million in 3 wire transfers routed through a shell company in Nevada. He had manipulated 2 quarterly reports to make Whitfield's numbers look weaker than they were, which would support a hostile takeover bid at a lower share price. He had personally recruited 2 junior auditors to help him. He had done all of it from his corner office on the 34th floor. Tamika presented the file to Jonathan on a Friday morning. He read it in silence for 45 minutes. When he closed the folder, his hands were perfectly still. I trusted him, Jonathan said quietly. I was in his wedding. I'm the godfather of his oldest son. Tamika did not speak. She let him have the silence. Jonathan looked up at her. His eyes were tired. You did this in 10 days. Harold helped, sir. Harold doesn't have your instinct. Harold is a good man, but he would have taken 6 months. She did not argue. Jonathan stood up. He walked to the window. Chicago spread out below him, gray and gold in the afternoon light. I'm going to handle this carefully. The FBI has a corporate crimes division. I have a contact there. We're going to give them everything. Brett will be arrested. Hensley will be exposed, but I have to be smart. If I move too fast, he'll destroy evidence. Yes, sir. I need you with me through this, closer than before. There will be people who won't want this investigation to happen. I understand. He turned to face her. Tamika, are you willing to take on that risk? I'd understand if you said no. You have a daughter, a mother. This is not what you signed up for. She met his eyes. Mr. Whitfield, I took this job to protect people. You are one of the good ones. I'm not going anywhere. He looked at her for a long moment. Thank you. That night he walked her to her car in the parking garage. It was the first time he had ever done that. They did not speak on the way down the elevator. When they reached her small blue sedan, he stopped. Good night, Tamika. Good night, Jonathan. He paused at the sound of his first name. Then he smiled, just a little, and walked away. Tamika drove home in a daze. That night she dreamed of her late husband Terrence. In the dream, he was sitting on the porch of their old house in Georgia. He was smiling. He said, "It's okay, baby. It's been long enough. You're allowed to be happy again." She woke up at 3 in the morning with tears on her pillow. The following Wednesday, Jonathan had a private lunch with an FBI agent named Special Agent Lorraine DuPont at a quiet restaurant on North Michigan Avenue. Tamika sat at the next table, reading a book, watching every person who entered and left. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. When it ended, Agent DuPont walked out the back with the file. Jonathan walked out the front with Tamika. They were 3 steps from his car when 3 men in hooded dark coats appeared from across the street. They moved fast. They moved with purpose. They were not photographers. Jonathan, behind you, Tamika said sharply. She stepped in front of him. The first man came at her with a wild swing. Tamika ducked under it, caught his wrist, twisted, and drove her knee into his stomach. He folded. She brought her elbow down on the back of his neck. He went down. The second man tried to tackle her. She sidestepped, caught his shoulder, and used his own momentum to throw him into the brick wall. He hit hard and slid down. The third man hesitated. Tamika locked eyes with him. "Walk away," she said. He turned and ran. Jonathan was standing with his back to the car, breathing hard. Tamika scanned the street. No one else. No backup. She pulled out her phone and called the police. They arrived in under 4 minutes. The two men on the ground were arrested. One had a long rap sheet. Both had been paid in cash by a middleman hired through a shell company. A Hensley shell company. Jonathan sat in the back of his car. His face was pale. Tamika slid in next to him. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "Yes, I'm fine." "You're shaking." "I know." She reached over and took his hand. It was cold. "You're safe, Jonathan, you're safe." He closed his eyes. "I know." They sat like that for a long time. When he finally opened his eyes, he looked at her in a way that made her chest hurt. "I have not held someone's hand like this since my sister died," he said. "I have not held someone's hand like this since my husband deployed for the last time." Neither of them let go. "Come to my house tonight," he said. "For dinner. Bring Imani, bring your mother. I want them there. I want you there. I don't want to be alone tonight." Tamika thought about it for 3 seconds. "We accept with gratitude, Jonathan." Deborah Brooks was 62 years old, 5'3", and had the presence of a Supreme Court justice. She walked into Jonathan Whitfield's lakefront home that evening wearing a navy blue dress with pearl earrings. Imani skipped in beside her, eyes wide at the enormous windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Jonathan greeted them at the door in a soft blue sweater and dark slacks. He was not the CEO tonight. He was just Jonathan. "Mrs. Brooks, thank you for coming." "Thank you for having us, young man." Deborah looked him up and down with the measured gaze of a mother who missed nothing. "Tamika tells me you are a man of character." "I try to be, ma'am." "Good, we'll see." Dinner was roasted chicken with rosemary, sweet potatoes, green beans, and fresh bread. Jonathan had cooked it himself. Imani was astonished. "You cook?" she asked. "I do. My mother taught me when I was about your age. She said every person should know how to feed the people they love." Imani thought about this. "I want to learn." "I'll teach you sometime, if your mother approves." Tamika nodded, her eyes shining. After dinner, Imani fell asleep on the couch with a book on her chest. Jonathan carried her gently to a guest room and covered her with a soft maroon blanket. He stood in the doorway for a moment watching her sleep, and Tamika saw his eyes fill up. Deborah Brooks watched him too. Then she pulled Tamika aside in the kitchen. "Baby," she said quietly, "that man loves you." "Mama, stop." "He loves you and you love him. I can see it in both of you." "It's too soon." "Too soon for what, sugar? Your husband has been gone 2 years. He was a good man. He would want you to live. You know he would." Tamika looked out the window at the lake. Her eyes were wet. "I'm scared, Mama." "Scared is fine, baby. Scared means you care. But don't you close the door on something good because you're scared. Let love in, let it in." Tamika hugged her mother for a long time. Meanwhile, in a tall glass building in downtown Boston, Gregory Hensley was reading a report. The report said his 2 hired men had been arrested in Chicago. The report said the Whitfield bodyguard had taken them down without a scratch. The report also said that she was a former Army Ranger with a Silver Star. Hensley crushed the report in his fist. "Find out everything about her," he said to the man standing across the desk. "Her daughter, her mother, where they live, where the kid goes to school, everything." "Yes, sir." The man left. Hensley sat alone at his desk, staring out at the Boston skyline. He did not know it yet, but he had already lost. 3 days later, Imani's elementary school received a phone call from a man claiming to be her uncle, saying he needed to pick her up early due to a family emergency. The school's protocol required verification. Imani had no uncle. The call was flagged. The school called Tamika. Tamika called Jonathan. Jonathan called Agent DuPont. Agent DuPont dispatched 2 FBI agents to the school within 15 minutes. Imani was safe. She had been in her classroom the entire time. The man who tried to pick her up never showed. The phone number traced back to a burner linked to one of Hensley's shell companies. That was the final piece. Agent DuPont moved. 48 hours later, the FBI raided 3 Hensley properties simultaneously. They arrested Gregory Hensley at his Boston office. They arrested Brett Calloway at his home in Lake Forest. They seized 17 terabytes of data, 3 shell company records, and evidence of corporate espionage, wire fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. The charges would eventually stretch to 47 counts. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. By noon, Whitfield Technologies stock was up 12%. By Friday, Brett Calloway's plea deal was in the works. By the following Monday, Gregory Hensley was denied bail. Tamika was in Jonathan's office the afternoon the news broke. He closed the laptop. He turned to her. "It's over." "Yes, sir." "Tamika." "Yes." He walked around the desk. He stopped in front of her. "I've been trying to find the right time to say something to you. There is no right time, so I'm just going to say it." She waited. "I love you. I've loved you for weeks. I loved you before I knew I loved you. I watched you take care of my life and my company and my safety without ever asking anything in return. I watched you raise a beautiful, brilliant little girl who deserves the world. I watched you be kinder than anyone I've ever met. And I love you." Tamika's throat was tight. "Jonathan, I know this is complicated. I know I'm your employer. I know you have a family. I'm not asking for anything tonight. I just needed you to know." She stepped forward. She took his hands. "I love you too." His eyes closed. "I have loved you for weeks," she said quietly. "I thought I couldn't say it. I thought I shouldn't say it, but I do." He pulled her into his arms. They stood like that for a long time. Neither of them spoke. Then she lifted her face, and he kissed her softly once on the forehead. "Come home with me tonight," he said. "Bring Imani, bring your mother, let's start something. We accept with gratitude." 6 months passed. Gregory Hensley was convicted on 31 of the 47 counts. He was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. Brett Calloway took a plea deal in exchange for testimony. He got 9 years. Hensley Dynamics was broken up and sold off in pieces. Whitfield Technologies absorbed the best divisions at fair market value. Harold Keene was promoted to Vice President of Corporate Security. And Tamika Brooks was named Director of Executive Protection, with a full team of 12 officers reporting to her. She had her own office on the 42nd floor. Her salary was 10 times what she had made at the warehouse. She bought her mother a small house in a quiet Chicago suburb with a garden. Deborah Brooks moved in that summer and started a community Bible study group within a week. Imani was enrolled in the Chicago Academy for Science and Mathematics on a full Whitfield Foundation scholarship. She had a mentor, Dr. Patricia Oyalola, an engineering professor who had grown up in the same kind of neighborhood Imani had. They met once a week. Imani was building a working model of a suspension bridge for the regional science fair. And Jonathan Whitfield proposed to Tamika Brooks on a cool spring evening at the end of the lakefront pier, with Imani standing next to him holding a small velvet box. Imani had picked the ring herself. It was a simple round diamond on a white gold band. Tamika cried. She said yes. Deborah Brooks, watching from 50 feet back with a cup of tea, said, "About time, sugar, about time." They were married at a small church on the south side of Chicago in late summer. Imani was the flower girl in a bright red dress. Harold walked Tamika down the aisle. Mrs. Colby from the family room attended. Agent DuPont sent flowers. The governor sent a card. The choir sang "His Eye is on the Sparrow," and everyone cried and everyone laughed, and nobody laughed at Tamika Brooks anymore. After the ceremony, as the reception wound down and the sun set over the city, Jonathan took Tamika's hand and led her out to the church garden. Imani was chasing fireflies with 3 other children. Deborah was sitting on a bench with her eyes closed, smiling. "Are you happy?" Jonathan asked. "More than I've been in a very long time." "Me too." They stood there in the soft evening light, and the city glowed around them, and the future stretched out ahead like a road neither of them had to walk alone anymore. Tamika thought about that morning in the cold courtyard, the men laughing at her, the trainer telling her to go home, the hearing notice folded in her pocket. She had almost walked away. She had almost believed them. She was so glad she had not. She leaned into Jonathan's shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her. Imani came running up, a firefly in her cupped hands, breathless with joy. "Mama, Mama, look. I see it, baby. Isn't it beautiful?" "Yes, sweetheart, it is." The three of them stood there together in the garden, and the light was bright, and the air was sweet, and everything at last was good.